So I want you to imagine something for just a second.
All right.
Imagine you are like the absolute funniest person in every single room you walk into.
Right.
You're universally adored by millions of people. You are making literally $1 million a single week.
Which is just staggering.
It is.
Yeah.
And you have the absolute best table at the finest restaurant in life. But, and here's the catch, while everyone is looking at you and just laughing, you are secretly living in this constant state of agonizing physical and mental terror.
I mean, it sounds like a complete contradiction.
Yeah.
Because the human brain is, it's largely conditioned to believe that wealth and adoration and like ultimate success form this impenetrable shield against pain.
Exactly.
But when you look closely at the source material for today, that shield operated much more like a prison.
It really did. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are looking at the raw, honestly unflinching memoir of Matthew Perry. It's called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing.
And it is a heavy read.
It is. The mission here is to look way beyond the famous sitcom catchphrases. We are going to examine the complex architecture of addiction, the neurobiology behind it, and the profound psychological mechanics of a man who quite literally used comedy as a survival tool.
Yeah, the disconnect between the public persona and the private reality is just jarring. I mean, Lisa Kudrow wrote the foreword to this book.
Right, Phoebe herself.
Yeah, and she admits that while she and the rest of the world loved him, she didn't truly know the staggering details of his daily, hourly battle just to survive.
Wow.
The person making the entire world laugh was fighting a lethal war in his own head.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want you, the listener, to think of this deep dive not as like a celebrity biography. Let's look at this as a psychological autopsy of how a desperate, clawing desire to be enough can build an absolute empire and simultaneously burn it to the ground.
Well, to understand how someone builds a massive fortress out of jokes, we have to look at what they're actually hiding from. The blueprint of the jester actually starts in a place of profound physical and emotional absence.
Like right from the beginning.
Right from the start. He's born in 1969 to impossibly beautiful parents. His mother was a former Miss Canadian University Snow Queen.
Quite the title.
Yeah. And she later became the press secretary to Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau.
Okay.
And his father was a folk singer turned actor who became the handsome old Spice guy in the commercials.
Oh, wow. But almost immediately, the abandonment begins, right?
Yeah.
Because when Matthew was just 9 months old, his father walked away, just left the family at the Canadian border.
Just walked away.
But even before that, there is a detail in the sources that absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
The phenobarbital.
Yes. As a severely colicky baby who just wouldn't stop crying, a doctor prescribed him a drug called phenobarbital. And he was given this at just 30 days old.
30 days. It is a critical piece of the neurobiological puzzle here, because phenobarbital is a major barbiturate. It's a central nervous system depressant that's actually often used to control seizures.
And they gave it to a baby.
Right. When you give a powerful sedative to a 1-month-old infant, you aren't actually soothing their distress. You are artificially shutting down the brain's ability to process or express that distress.
So basically, instead of being comforted, his earliest physical memory is just being chemically muted?
Exactly. The foundational groundwork is laid right there. The unconscious takeaway for a developing brain becomes uncomfortable feelings are intolerable, and a chemical substance makes them go away.
And that theme of isolation, it just keeps compounding from there.
Oh, yeah.
Like at age 5, he is flown as an unaccompanied minor from Montreal to Los Angeles to visit his dad.
So young.
He describes being utterly terrified on this flight, surrounded by all these drinking adults, his little feet not even touching the floor. And he sees the lights of LA and he thinks, that means I'm about to have a parent.
Because a parent equals safety. And when external safety is entirely absent, a child is forced to manufacture it themselves.
Which explains the finger incident.
Yes, at age 3. This is arguably the genesis of his entire comedic defense system.
Yeah, he slammed his hand in a car door and completely sliced off the tip of his middle finger. His mother rushes to the hospital. She's completely distraught, sobbing over her injured child. And his immediate instinct as a 3-year-old missing a literal piece of his finger is to perform for her.
Right.
He tells her, you don't need to cry, I didn't cry.
It's a profound role reversal.
Yeah.
The child becomes the caretaker. He learns that if he can manage his mother's emotional state, If he can entertain her and keep her calm, he might secure his own safety.
He can keep people from abandoning him.
Exactly.
And I really want to push back on a cultural trope here, because we always hear that cliche of the sad clown, right?
Right, the tears of a clown.
Exactly, that comedians are born from tragedy and they use humor as a creative outlet. But reading through these sources, it doesn't sound like an outlet at all.
No, not at all.
It sounds like a highly calibrated defense mechanism, like a tactical survival strategy.
It was entirely tactical.
Yeah.
Because if everyone is laughing, the room is safe.
Right.
If everyone is happy, no one leaves.
Yeah.
But sustaining that level of performance, managing the emotional state of every single adult in the room, it requires an immense amount of cognitive energy.
You can't even imagine.
So by the time he hit his teenage years, sheer willpower wasn't enough to manage his nervous system anymore. He needed an external chemical.
Which brings us to LA. He moves to Los Angeles at 15 to live with his dad. Now, his dad was a highly functional alcoholic.
Very functional.
He drank 6 vodka tonics a day, called it the best part of his day, but woke up at 7 a.m., perfectly fine, went to auditions, and just lived his life.
Right.
Matthew quickly realized he did not inherit that functional gene.
The mechanism of addiction was already wired into his DNA, just waiting for the right catalyst.
And the catalyst arrived at age 14. He's back in Canada, in a backyard with his friends, the Murray brothers. They drink a 6-pack of Budweiser and a bottle of Andre's Baby Duck wine.
Baby Duck.
Yeah. His friends get sick. They are throwing up all over the grass. But Matthew lies back in the mud, looks at the moon, and feels absolute peace for the first time in his entire life.
To understand why that cheap wine was so incredibly powerful for him, we have to look at a condition he suffered from called anhedonia.
Okay, what is that?
So anhedonia is the neurological inability to feel pleasure.
Really?
Yeah, the reward pathways in his brain simply didn't register joy the way a typical brain does.
What?
So he was an excitement addict, constantly performing, but never actually feeling the joy of the reward.
Oh, wow.
So when he drank that night, he wasn't chasing a euphoric high. He was establishing a baseline of silence.
It's like he was born with his internal stereo volume turned up to 11, just blasting static and chronic inadequacy. And alcohol was the very first time someone handed him a mute button.
That's a great way to put it. Think of the brain like a thermostat. A healthy brain regulates its own temperature, right? Producing dopamine and endorphins to keep things comfortable.
Right.
Because of his anhedonia and anxiety, Matthew's internal thermostat was broken. He was freezing. Alcohol was like pumping a massive furnace into the house.
So suddenly he's warm.
Suddenly he's warm. But the danger is, once you start relying on the furnace, the house's internal thermostat shuts down completely. It forgets how to make its own heat.
And right around the same time, he finds his second furnace. He discovers acting.
Yes.
He stars in a high school play, Our Town, and he's naturally brilliant at it. His dad gives him a book on acting with a playful but honestly dark inscription. Another generation shot to hell.
Because acting functioned identically to alcohol.
Yeah.
It allowed him to take a literal vacation from his own mind.
Right. He could be someone else.
He didn't have to be Matthew Perry, the abandoned, anxious kid with a screaming nervous system. He could step into a character and experience their confidence, their calmness, their script.
And he gets early success with it, too. He goes to Chicago to film a movie called A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon with River Phoenix.
Wow.
And the sources show him speaking about River Phoenix with such reverence, admiring his unparalleled brilliance, and then later mourning his tragic death from an overdose. Matthew was rubbing shoulders with the brightest stars, experiencing the magic of Hollywood.
But acting and alcohol were just turning down the volume of the anxiety. He decided he needed to unplug the speaker entirely.
Yeah.
This leads to the belief that the ultimate cure for his internal pain was absolute, unquestionable fame.
3 weeks before his entire life changed, he is sitting alone in his apartment. He gets on his knees and he prays. He says, God, you can do whatever you want to me. Just please make me famous.
Considering the extreme physical toll of the second half of his life, that prayer reads like a literal Faustian bargain.
It really does. And he almost missed the boat entirely.
Oh, I love this part.
He almost missed playing Chandler Bing on Friends because he was attached to a pilot called LAX 2194.
Which is just hilarious.
It was a comedy about futuristic alien baggage handlers.
Sorting alien luggage in the year 2194. I mean, it is remarkable how close pop culture history came to looking completely different.
It's insane to think about. And what's even crazier is that his close friend at the time, Craig Bierko, actually got offered the Chandler role first.
right?
He had 2 offers on the table and asked Matthew for advice. Matthew, knowing Chandler was the perfect role, told his friend to take it, but Bierko turned it down for the other show.
So the path cleared. And once he stepped onto that soundstage, the cultural phenomenon of Friends was instantaneous.
Yeah, it exploded.
But the internal culture of that set was radically different from typical Hollywood productions, and that fundamentally shaped his experience of that fame.
Because of Courtney Cox, right.
Exactly. Courtney Cox was the most famous cast member at the start, and on day 1, she announced, "There are no stars here. We're an ensemble."
Which David Schwimmer later weaponized in the best way possible.
He really did.
He successfully negotiated for all 6 of them to be paid equally as a team. They formed an unprecedented united front and eventually made $1,100,040 per episode.
So the prayer is answered. He has the ultimate fame, an unimaginable amount of money, and the validation of millions. He even successfully courts the biggest movie star on the planet, Julia Roberts.
Okay, the Julia Roberts story is just incredible and so uniquely 90s.
It really is.
She agreed to guest star on the post-Super Bowl episode of Friends, but only on the condition that she was written into Chandler's storyline, but she made him earn it.
Right.
She told him she'd do it if he wrote her a paper on quantum physics.
And he actually wrote the paper and sent it to her.
It led to this surreal 3-month courtship via fax machines. Just faxes flying back and forth across the world. They fall in love, they date, and then he breaks up with her. He dumps Julia Roberts.
Yep.
Why? Because he was absolutely terrified that she would inevitably realize he wasn't enough. He pulled the plug before she could abandon him.
This is a profound self-sabotage mechanism.
Completely.
The external world is giving him every possible signal of worthiness, the money, the ratings, the affection of Julia Roberts. But his internal receiver is fundamentally broken. He cannot process the incoming data.
I want you, the listener, to stop and think about how this applies outside of Hollywood. Think about how often we sabotage a good relationship, a new job, or a personal goal simply because the anxiety of waiting for the other shoe to drop feels worse than the pain of just destroying it yourself.
That is so true.
Imagine getting the exact thing you thought would fix you, and waking up the next day to realize the agonizing hole inside you is still completely empty.
And when ultimate external success fails to fix the internal trauma, the psychological distress mutates into a catastrophic physical reality.
Right.
Because if the antidote stops working, you just take vastly more of the poison.
We see that transition to brutal physical trauma while he's filming the movie Fools Rush In. He had a jet ski accident. A doctor hands him a single pain pill.
Just one.
He takes it in a red Mustang convertible as the sun is coming up over the desert. And he describes this euphoric click. And that single click eventually escalated to a 55 Vicodin a day habit.
Taking 55 Vicodin a day radically alters the brain's chemistry. At that dosage, the drug completely ceases to be about getting high.
I'm struggling to understand something here, though. If his body is literally failing under the weight of 55 pills a day, why doesn't the basic human survival instinct override the addiction? Like, how does a habit that's severe bypass our innate biological desire to not die?
It's because of how opioids hijack the midbrain.
The midbrain.
Yes, the midbrain is the primitive part of our neurology that handles survival. It tells us when we need food, water, and oxygen.
Okay.
Opioids essentially hack into that system and reprioritize the hierarchy of needs.
Wow.
To a severe addict's brain, the drug isn't a luxury. The midbrain genuinely believes it needs the chemical as desperately as it needs oxygen. So the survival instinct isn't failing, it's being tricked into fighting for the drug instead of the body.
That makes the physical toll so much more harrowing.
It does.
You could actually track the severity of his addiction by watching his weight fluctuate on television. Over the seasons, he bounced between 128 pounds and 225 pounds. It got so severe that Jennifer Aniston confronted him in his trailer. She told him point blank, "We can smell it."
To have your deepest, darkest secret vocalized by a colleague, no matter how lovingly it was intended, is a shattering reality check.
Yeah.
But the midbrain hijack is stronger than shame. It pushed him to the absolute brink of death.
The medical realities he faced are just brutal. At age 30, he suffered from alcohol-induced pancreatitis.
Which is an incredibly painful condition. The excessive alcohol causes the digestive enzymes in the pancreas to activate prematurely.
Oh, no.
Essentially, the pancreas begins to digest its own tissue.
He spent 30 days in the hospital on a continuous drip of Dilaudid for the pain.
And Dilaudid is an opioid painkiller roughly 5 to 10 times stronger than morphine.
You kidding?
No, treating an opioid addict with Dilaudid is like throwing gasoline on a house fire. But the medical severity of the pancreatitis left doctors with few options.
And it only got worse. At 49 years old, his colon literally exploded from opiate abuse.
That is just terrifying.
He was living in a sober living house at the time. He is screaming in agony, entirely delusional, hallucinating ping pong balls on a couch that aren't even there.
Right.
And a counselor at the facility tried to block his assistant, Aaron, from driving him to the emergency room, claiming Matthew was just displaying drug-seeking behavior. Aaron had to rev the car and drive over a curb just to get him out.
And Aaron's decision saved his life, though, by the absolute slimmest of margins. When they arrived at the hospital, his biological systems were in catastrophic failure. He was given a 2% chance to live. Doctors had to hook him up to an ECMO machine.
Wait, what exactly does that do?
ECMO stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation.
Okay.
It is a machine that completely bypasses the heart and lungs, basically pumping and oxygenating the patient's blood outside of their body.
Oh, wow.
It is an absolute Hail Mary medical intervention when the organs have completely quit. He was in a coma on this machine for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And here's where it gets really interesting. The wild paradox here is that the immense wealth he earned from friends is exactly what funded this survival.
Right.
He had access to private jets, to Swiss rehabs, on-call doctors, and elite medical facilities. His fortune essentially subsidized a level of chronic addiction that would have killed an average person decades earlier.
It prolonged his life, but it also prolonged the suffering. During COVID, at a luxury rehab in Switzerland, he faked pain to get prescribed propofol.
Which is a heavy anesthetic, right?
Yes, it's a powerful sedative that depresses the central nervous system and respiration. He was given propofol for a procedure, and because his system was so compromised, his heart stopped beating entirely.
For 5 whole minutes, he was in cardiac arrest for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The CPR required to bring him back to life was so violent that the doctors broke 8 of his ribs. And because of those broken ribs, he was in too much agony to film a scene he had booked with Meryl Streep in the movie Don't Look Up. He had to walk away from the project.
When you look at the pharmacology and the sheer physical trauma, it is a medical miracle he survived to write the memoir at all.
Truly.
His body was an active war zone. Yet his mind, his comedic timing, remained incredibly sharp for so much of his career. It really highlights the deeply compartmentalized nature of high-functioning addiction. You can be at the absolute pinnacle of your profession, hitting every mark perfectly, while your biological systems are in total collapse.
So what does this all mean for us? We've looked at the childhood trauma, the meteoric rise, the crushing addictions, the exploding organs. We need to distill this down. Matthew Perry's story is a profound, terrifying lesson in the limits of external success.
Absolutely.
He had it all. He had millions of dollars in the bank. He had the universal adoration of the public. He dated movie stars, yet he was locked in a brutal, lifelong, agonizing war with his own brain.
It is a stark reminder that the external world cannot heal an internal wound. No amount of money or fame can fix a broken internal receiver. And that reality challenges us to fundamentally shift how we look at the people around us.
Look at the people in your own life right now. The funny ones, the successful ones, the people who are always cracking jokes, who seem to have it all perfectly together, who hold court and keep everyone entertained at dinner parties. We rarely, if ever, see the battles they're fighting in the dark.
Because we culturally assume that laughter equates to happiness.
Right.
But as the source material makes devastatingly clear, laughter can be a shield. It can be a highly evolved survival tactic designed to keep people close while simultaneously keeping them at a safe distance from the truth.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We learned today that Matthew Perry spent his entire life terrified of being abandoned. He learned at 3 years old that if he made jokes, people wouldn't cry and people wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
He performed constantly so people would stay. But if you have to pretend to be someone else to be loved, whose love are you actually keeping? You're curating an audience, not a connection. So I ask you, when the laughter finally stops and the audience goes home, who is left in the room with you?